test flight schedule of the craft. Now, they had times they had designated high-performance tests. This obviously wasn't one that was a high-performance test. The high-performance test goes above the mountain range, and they do much more radical moves with the thing. Look, this is a prized item, and they're not doing anything like taking it out of the atmosphere and flying around other countries or anything like that. They just fly with this thing right over the test site. But they were doing some radical moves with it. And since I had the test flight schedule, statistically, the amount of traffic in the surrounding areas on the highway was lowest on Wednesdays. And that's why Dennis told us that all the test flights occurred only on Wednesdays, because it'd be the least chance that anyone would see what's going on.
And this was before the government had expanded the forbidden territory around Area 51 and Cummings Lake and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that occurred after my story came out. Then people started going up on the mountaintops and trying to look down into there, and they kind of freaked out and then did the land grab and pushed everybody back. But I think all that occurred long after that I came out.
So you're working there, and while you're working there, you're under this crazy schedule. Forgive me for explaining your story, but you would get these phone calls. You have to go to the airport at 11 p.m., and your wife started thinking that you were having an affair.
Yeah, apparently so. Now, I did give my permission to have, as part of the, security clearance process, I gave written permission to have the phones monitored and things of that sort. So they weren't doing any covert stuff. They, with any Q clearance, which is civilian top secret clearance or military top secret clearance, they go talk to friends and, places you've been, make sure you're not connected to foreign countries. But, monitoring your phone is nothing unusual. However, they insisted that, you don't even talk to your loved one, to your partner, to your wife, whatever, about what's going on. So she was essentially in the dark and didn't know the phone was being monitored. Well, part of the security clearance is that not only do you not have any connections to foreign countries and are a maniac, but you have to have a stable home life too. Well, she started having an affair with a flight instructor. Now, they were monitoring this on the phone, and they knew it and I didn't. So they stopped me coming in, and their attitude at the time was, we need to see how this is going to play out, and Lazar's going to get a little weird or anything, so let's just, hold him off from coming in and, see what happens.
And they explained this to you, what was happening?
Well, after the fact, yeah, because time kind of went on, and there were guys that were following me around, and I started getting a little concerned, going, well, didn't they put me out of the project? And if so, they're not just going to let me hang out at home and go get a new job knowing what I know. So, as time went on, I started getting a little concerned, and my closest friend just kind of got together and said, hey, remember that job I told you about? This is what's going on. And you don't need to take my word for it. Wednesday night, we need to all go out here. I want to show you what's going on. So I took everything and we went out. Remember, since I had the test flight schedule, and went outside the base, out in the desert, and so we could see, have a high performance test. And it's quite different from everybody, so they knew I wasn't.
It's videos of these tests, right?
Yeah, but remember, this is in the dark in the 80s with a big monster-sized camcorder, and you got, a bright light jumping around. But, we did video of it, by today's standards.
But is your video specifically available, the video that you took?
Yeah, well, George has it. I have no idea.
Yeah, sure. There's a video back development science online. I did an analysis of it. It was interesting. Just take a look at how...
Pull this microphone up to your face. Keep about a fist from your face.
All right. To see how his video looks now, but as far as video evidence, we are talking 80s camcorders. The most important thing is the human story here. everybody that he took up there on 3 separate occasions, they don't all like each other. They don't all talk. They all agree on one thing. They saw something that night at the exact point in time and space that Bob Lazar said it. Remember, this is 17 miles south of Area 51. No one even knew really about Area 51. We're talking Papoose Lake. And they all agreed. They saw something that night they had never seen before and they'd never seen since. Right when he said it. So that's one of like the 6 things where I'm like, how did you know? You can dismiss him. I tried to dismiss him. But some things we can't get around. And there's about 5 or 6 of them. How did he know about it?
If Jamie wants to find that video right now, what would you look at?
Hey! Bob Lazar, UFO, S4, Area 51, just kind of like that. So it's like the S4 UFO video, Bob Lazar. A guy does an analysis, but you're analyzing these 80 videos. Right. He, from the very beginning, Bob never said, I have proof of my story and I'm going to tell the world. He said at the very beginning, I cannot prove my story. That's not why I'm telling this. George now convinced him to tell people, and he lived through it. I didn't believe it either until I talked with George.
Okay, so you filmed this test flight, one test flight, and then you get caught.
Actually, it was, I think, the 3rd time, because we went out there the first time. Everybody saw it. Everybody was amazed because it did some radical maneuvers, and everybody had a lot to say about it.
Maneuvers that I've seen the video. It doesn't.
Get it, boys.
Something we have now that does that.
No,
In terms of like a human piloted craft. But I don't know, obviously, what the government.
no, it's impossible. Nothing can move like that. And remember, we didn't start filming from the very beginning. We were waiting for something, to happen. The crowd took off, flying at it, stopped, turned it a right angle, threw back, and then, after it did some, amazing stuff, that we get the camera, and we started filming. So it doesn't have all of it on there, it just has some.
The way I described it to my friends, I said, I said, take a laser pointer and have a wall and move around the wall. You know how it moves around the wall, it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with inertia or physics, or it's not impeded in any way by the atmosphere.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
You're essentially separated from reality, as crazy as that sounds, with being encased in some gravitational envelope. Inertia is not going to affect it, and this is how some of those recent sightings of Commander David Fravor, I'm sure you've heard of the Tic Tac UFO. I mean, he describes exactly that the thing operates exactly the way I was describing, and that's why it was interesting to talk to. But we saw this, and on the way home, it's like, wait, we got away with it. We should try it again the next test flight day. So this became a thing to do, and I think it was on after we got started. The stupidest thing about
Tailgate.
yeah, it was ridiculous. And yeah, and what was funny was we went out there and Fred, Gene Huff and I were leaning on the front of the vehicle, and just for some reason we just started talking shit. Like, well, I hope they realize that I don't remember what we were saying, but something about attacking the base, something along those lines, stealing the crab, something like that. And then about 20 feet in front of us, we see a little green light fall on the ground and roll to us. And unbeknownst to us, now it's pitch black, you can't see your hand in front of your face. There were a bunch of guards standing right out there, and they had a night vision scope where they were like from here to the wall, looking at us, listening to us, and the guy dropped it, and the scope rolled over to us, and you could see the green screen. We turned the lights on, and all these guys were there, so it was, yeah. So we did incredibly stupid stuff, and got caught as we should have.
So when they catch you and they bring you in, then what happens?
Well, I went in for debriefing. The following day, I went to Indian Springs Air Force Base, which is kind of a defunct base that he used to use at the nuclear test site. And this is when they brought out the transcript of the phone call with my wife. And, they sat me down and we said, we meant to keep the secret. We meant you can't tell your friends, right? You know, and it's just being sarcastic and and then they got real serious. This is where they, took the transcript out and were reading me what my wife and her friends were talking about.
So what happens to them? What do they do? Why don't they arrest you?
I don't know why. I'm not sure they knew what to do, but they did let me go that night, and I went home. And this is kind of when the most stressful part started.
Because you're realizing you're being monitored.
Now I know. Not only am I being monitored, but now I know I'm in trouble. And it wasn't a short time after that I contacted. At that time, only investigator report I had heard of in Las Vegas was George Knapp, and told him some of the story because I had no idea what was going to happen at that point.
So George Knapp tries to dissect your story, tries to find holes in it, tells it, puts it online, and makes everybody aware of it. And that's how I found out.
Yeah, make a long story short.
What happens? Yeah, really. What happens from there on? Do they contact you and say, "Hey, Bob, it's probably good if you shut up"? They try to label you as crazy. Was there?
There were a lot of things that happened, between that point. I'm leaving out a lot of stuff to fill in the story. We have to go back to Los Alamos and talk about that.
Top secret weapons stuff.
No, I'm talking about the 115. Well, I don't know. I have to think about how
What is the problem with this?
I don't want to get myself into more trouble by admitting something, so I just have to dance around a couple.
He was rated just during the filming of the movie. People thought it was
the movie's great, by the way.
Thanks, Joe.
And it's on Netflix right now. If anybody wants to check it out, and if you're one of those people like me, who I've always loved the idea of UFOs. I became extremely weary talking to people who are UFO believers and UFO fanatics because there's so many of them that are full of shit. And not just full of shit, they're childish, delirious. Like the way they talk about things. I mean, there's so many people that I'm in contact. They reach me in the night and they explain to me what we're doing. The ocean's wrong. And anyway,
This is one of the reasons I didn't want to do the show.
I'm sure.
It's no joke. We've had people literally camp out on our front lawn, and in some ways I can relate to some of these people. Maybe some of them did really have some kind of experience and saw something, and all their friends think they're crazy. But hey, now there's this guy I heard on the radio, and he knows I'm not full of shit, so I gotta talk to him. And most of the correspondence I get are people trying to get a hold of me. Oh, buddy, you gotta listen to me. I'm coming to talk to you. I'm driving from Oklahoma or whatever, but some of them are just fucking bad shit, crazy.
Yeah.
They're frightening.
There's a lot of schizophrenics that are involved in the conspiracy world. There's just a lot of people that are...
Don't be confused. BeConfused.com.
There's real issues.
Joe, it would be a disservice to your audience to not say that we have to look at what's going on now. I already show a bunch of stuff about what's going on now. If you really understand what's going on now, you can't see Bob's story in the correct light after 30 years. UFO case that came out, I've heard people, even on the show, say, oh, there's a glitch in the radar. That's a data poor perspective. You just don't know yet what's really going on. Commander Fravor, I was able to get the interview with him to talk to him way before it went public. I got that from him. He saw it. Other pilots saw it. This is a big thing that's going on right now. They had more sightings on the East Coast recently, cubes with spherical orbs. These are not aerodynamic, and these are the people we trust to defend us on 9/11. Commander Fravor protected Los Angeles on 9/11. So we trust them, but they're not trained observers. Radar, individuals see these things, and the big one, just to throw it down so we can consider a story a little differently, there's more depth to it. The big one is the United States government has admitted that they have been continuously studying the UFO phenomenon. That program was called ATIP, was called OSAP. That's the mother program. George Knapp got that out. They announced to the New York Times about ATIP, but OSAP, these acronyms, OSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Applications Program, who cares? That was the mother program. So they've admitted we didn't stop studying UFOs in 1969 with Project Blue Book. We don't think it's crazy. We actually want to reverse engineer the technology. That's why on your other show, you said, what's this AAV thing? It's like they're making up another UFO name. Well, hold on, there's a reason. Because in the documents, the DIA documents that George Knapp released, that everybody said was fake till now they know is real, they call them AAVs, which is Advanced Aerospace Vehicles. People are getting the acronyms wrong. So the reason for the terminology change is so that we can mimic what we're reading in the DIA documents. People can look for that now. So they changed the names to get people away from UFO or UAP, even like Hillary Clinton said on air, right? So
What are you talking about?
Hillary Clinton informed the public on Jimmy Kimmel, oh, Jimmy, we don't call them UFOs anymore. We call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Right, so she kind of was getting, the Clintons are very into the UFO topic. Senator Reid, he's done a lot for the subject, the study of it, right? So she informed the public so they could look for the right term. So these terms are important because the DIA, in those documents, they've been calling them AAVs for quite some time now.
And they changed the name to anomalous.
It's kind of a misnomer. So they always mess around with things, but it's actually advanced.
They're describing it in the news. They're calling it anomalous aerospace vehicle.
Totally, and that's cool. They were also saying anomalous aerospace. So my point is, people don't know this now. They think this fantasy. This part that we're studying it, seriously, we're studying on it, and if we're getting great data from visual patterns, pretty hard to find aerospace. And guess what? That's up the sky one radar. It's 8,000 radar system. You don't understand how you're just behind the curtain. You don't have information because of this statement that you're talking about. I saw you get totally upset with UFO topic. I met you first when you were totally upset with UFO topic. It's the people. When you're doing your I'm sorry, man. When you're doing your show, the Joe Rogan questions, everything, I can see how frustrating. Trust me, I have been frustrated. And how luckily my mentor's George Knapp, and he's taught me the pitfalls as I went through it. The whole point of this plan is just that we have to now look at Bob's story, but knowing the facts, not someone saying it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a glitch. They're not. And so if you don't know that, you just don't have the information. So what is he said that has come true? He's totally unimpressed with it. Right? What has he said has come true? So I was like, Bob, they've announced gravity is okay. You were right here, you're vindicated. And he looks at me, he's like, think about it, Jeremy. I had like a 50-50 chance. He was not very impressed, right? But they announced gravity. So they detected, in a sense, they detected gravity waves. That was that. You might know more. There's two black holes that were colliding, and that's how they were able to detect.
Yeah, somebody, I don't know which group it was or what part of the government was for. Yeah, but they, built a gigantic gravity wave detector and pretty much detected.
And there are such things as
Its first observation of gravitational waves says it was in 2016. Okay, the first observation of gravitational waves was made on 14th of September 2015, and was announced by the LIGO and Virgo collaborators on the 11th of February 2016. Previously, gravitational waves had only been inferred indirectly via their effect on the timing of pulsars in binary star systems. The waveform connected by both LIGO, LIGO observatories, master predictions of general relativity for a gravitational wave emanating from the inward
but they're not. They're waves. They're not particles. And that's
So the thought is that the way we experience gravity is based on mass, which is why the moon, which is roughly 1/4 the size of the Earth, has 1/6 of the Earth's gravity. So there's some sort of a computation you make based on mass.
right. And remember, we can observe the effects of gravity, but we have no idea what it is. All we can do is observe it, and we can't make. The only way you can make gravity is just put more mass together, and it's just a product of gravity. But if you can make if you have a machine that makes gravity, you can pretty much do anything. You can affect time. You can have force fields. All that stuff that's in science fiction becomes reality if you have a machine that can make gravity. And what we're done in the desert was a machine that makes gravity.
I love your analogy of dropping off a small I love that analogy. Because back then, that was impossible. That was magic. What you're talking about here, the fact that they just discovered this 4 years ago, this is when we're, as much as we know and as impressed as we are, as we should be, with how much more technologically advanced we are than every other creature on this planet, we're still, in many ways, in the adolescence of technological innovation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's even adolescence.
And when you're talking about this binary star system, Zeta Reticuli, and who knows how much longer these things have been around than us, who knows what their evolutionary cycle's been, who knows what, we might be talking about something that's a billion years more advanced than us.
Yeah, it could easily be. Now, I'm not believe it or not, I'm not into UFOs. I don't follow stories or,
Even after your experiences?
No, I'm fascinated with the technology, and it really hurts me like every night I go to sleep that, I know that it was my own doing, essentially, that prevented me from continuing on in the project. I mean, it's that to be on that cutting edge of technology is so fulfilling to me.
Right.
But by the same token, I don't really care that there's aliens or where they come from. I mean, the prize is the technology, and that's what I'm fascinated by. But no, I don't listen to UFO stories and that sort of thing. But George Knapp is, he's the guy that has the contacts and tries to thread everything together. And what he recently told me is he found, I don't know if it was either documentation or people that he spoke to, except the existence of this project, the project that I was on. It's something that they seem to take out every 8 or 10 years.
So that's a very specific memo, and this is the first time I'll be very clear with people about it. It's a big topic of conversation right now. It's called the Wilson Memo. You can look it up. Admiral Wilson met with a scientist who's actually was featured in one of my films. Everybody has been debating whether or not this document of a conversation with the sitting admiral at the time is a real document. It's an actual conversation that happened, and this document is real. Everybody wants to know the world's going crazy right now in the UFO world. I'll tell you straight up right now, I'm in the position to know, and it is a real document, that it is real. So the conversation you read in that conversation was had. I can't attest to every...
You're not being very clear.
Sure. No problem. So there was a document that is circulating right now that is really big. It's going around everywhere. People are asking me,
What is this document?
it's called the Wilson Memo, is how you can find it online. The Wilson Leak.
There it is. Jimmy's got it. Wilson Memorandum. So human
No.
volunteer.
Yeah. So, Admiral Wilson meets with this scientist, and they have this discussion. Oddly enough, that special projects at EG&G, and if I remember, the document was from 2001. I'm telling everybody right now, it's real, and we'll see. My history's pretty good at like saying if something's real or not, right? So here we go. The document comes out. They meet at EG&G Special Projects. In 1989, they stumble into a problem. This happens. They put the technology away, and then they bring it back out and see if it's even scientists go on and if they can make any progress. So this document kind of talks about this process. The big thing I get from it, and a lot of it's vindicating to Bob, and one of the things it's vindicating, besides the EG&G thing, is that private industry, so this guy's an admiral, and he says, I found out about your SAP, your Special Access Program. I need to know about it. And he's going into a private part of industry, and he is denied access. And he says, I should be running this program. And they were able to deny him access. So I think the takeaway here is, check it out. I'm telling you that is an actual correct, that is a leak. Now, everything said in that document, I don't know.
What are you talking about? What is said in that document?
It's between a scientist and an admiral that are sitting and they're having a meeting, and they're talking about the search for the UFO subject, the search to get special access program access to all of these different things, like reverse engineering programs. So in this document, they talk about it. And I believe that this document, the person that went was employed by Robert Bigelow, one of the guys that has a couple of orbiting satellites and all that stuff.
The guy who owns Columbus.
No, he's not. He was the guy that owns Columbus. Yeah, he used to own it. There's a new owner, and I interviewed him for my other film, but there's a new owner. You'll be hearing a lot more about that soon. But, there's stuff that you'll be hearing about some more information. Anyway, the whole point of this, insertion here is just that document kind of validates a lot of this idea Bob just said, that they make a little progress and they can't go anywhere. They tuck it away and then they bring it back out, 10 years later and start working on it. What is the limiting factor? I think Bob should speak on this, but it's the material science.
Yeah, it's really where physics is, so I can see them doing that. I mean, I didn't have any information on that, but I think what George uncovered is probably accurate, that, we try and do what we can, and once we reach a roadblock, we really can't figure it out. It's just wait, put the thing away, wait for science to catch up, and, a decade later, let's take the project out again and see, all right, now where can we go?
But there's got to be someone who remains informed, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've got your scientists like you and Barry. You got people that you compartmentalize. You have to keep working.
Yeah, there has to be some people that know everything.
You've got security, and then someone's going to be on the outside saying, hey, keep guarding this building.
I think a lot of that is private industry. I think that's how they keep it. Yeah, I think that's how they litter, because the government is just so leaky. I think that's kind of what they're doing.
That's what the document kind of proves. You just articulated that it is a complete
What private industry? Some aerospace company or something?
I don't know. Yeah, the guy with the admiral wouldn't name it in the call record conversation.
So they still have these things.
I would guess. I mean, I don't have any information on
Have
it.
you ever asked anyone that has any inkling of any idea where they got it or how they got it?
No, but something must have been said to me from there. But it was just too long ago, and I can't quite remember what he said, but it just left a seed in my mind. I think at least one of them was part of an archaeological dig. So it's old. At least one of them is old. I don't know if it's the one I worked on, but I remember something to do with an archaeological dig. So that means it's not just old, it's ancient.
Great Stevens builders.
Yeah,
Right?
that's all of it would.
Yeah, that tripped me out when he said that the first time.
Yeah, that's a freak out right there. Just a couple of dudes with some brushes looking for a Tyrannosaurus Rex bone. They hit metal.
And when did they find it? That they have 9 of them.
Well, and how could we have not heard about that? What about the guys with the brushes? How could you uncover something like that? And
Joe's newspaper at home, Dennis. I mean, they said it on that first day.
Oh, you mean the Roswell?
Yeah, the one you told me.
Yeah, I have a cover. What is this?
this is the document, but I had to just dig and find it.
Yeah, it's just kind of. Yeah, so this is where they meet at EG&G. This is Admiral Wilson, and there's a lot more coming out. I don't want to be clear. George didn't put this out. He didn't leak this out anyway. This is, I can tell you how I ordered this conversation. So this was an employee at the time, Robert Bigelow.
This is in 2002.
Right. Do you remember when he had that government contract called OSAP, the world all knows about now, and he had needed to study the range? That $22 million, everybody is saying it was for ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Program. $22 million was for ATIP. That was pushed through 3 congressmen, right? An astronaut. It was pushed through. And that's what that $22 million, by the way, they spend more money on Viagra every year than they do studying UFOs. If it was just this program, which I think is funny. speculation, but anyway, the program, this is what was the mother program. So it got the 22 million. Really, it was the study Skinwalker Ranch. Oddly enough, that 22 million all was inspired by the phenomenon they're seeing at Skinwalker Ranch, because the scientists, they're seeing vehicles coming through like the space of the sky.
Yeah, we went there. I went there
Right,
with Duncan.
yeah,
We
you-
interviewed a bunch of people that seemed full of shit, but a couple that didn't.
But
It's
this-
very, very interesting.
Totally, and if you look, I spent a lot of time in the area. I'm not talking about those stories. I'm saying there were scientists hired by the government, right, through Bigelow to study the ranch because they thought it was important. And whatever. The point is that 22 million was to study that. Then we have ATIP, which is like an auxiliary kind of program of military sightings, like Commander Fravers and that sort of thing. This document is just one of those things that has now come forward that through the Bigelow studies, it was government funded, and then it was personally funded and then government funded. It's just one of those things that kind of shakes you, because you got this military guy who can't get access because of the private industry that's holding these non-terrestrial materials that they can't study. So that's the claim right now. Give it some time, let people dig more into this. It's fascinating, man.
So you are essentially you're kicked out, right? You're out of this program. You can't work with these crafts anymore. And do they give you any threats? Do they tell you what you have to do from here on out?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way it ended was I told George Knapp all this stuff, and he said, well, let's just get it on tape. Should something happen, at least we have a record of it. And I don't remember what the emphasis was. But, at some point, George wanted to air it, and he said, you make the call on it, and look, at any point you change your mind, we won't air it. And it came down to the day where George wants to put it on the 5 o'clock news. He said, hey, this is important stuff. People have to know about it. And I thought it was too. I thought it's kind of a crime. I know you got to keep the technology secret, but you can't not tell everybody that this stuff is going on. That we have, actual hardware from another civilization. It's a big fucking deal. Probably the biggest one there ever was. And George said, today's the day we got to put it on the news or something to that effect. And when it came right down to the time to air it, I changed my mind and I said, we're not doing it. And that's what turned into the famous wrestling match between me and George trying to get the tape, but he won because he's a bigger guy.
Does he actually physically wrestle?
Well, I think it was more of a pulling match. I don't think we ever hit the ground. But he got the tape, put it in the player, and boom, 5 o'clock news was on. And then I got a call after that, and they said, it was from Dennis. He said, do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now? And he hung up the phone. That was the last communication I had.
And what has happened to you since?
After that, a lot of people I've known either were audited by the IRS, anybody I knew that had clearances, that were in secure programs, had clearances one of mine that Jeremy knows.
I can't remember his name. Tell the story now that he's out of work up there.
He was working up at the Tonopah Range, waiting for his clearance to come through, and they pulled that. It became, it's like if they can't get the person that's involved, they just create a problem for everybody that surrounds them. And so, I mean, the way it turns out, it hurt a lot of people's lives that I was connected to, and that's an effective way of shutting someone up. So
I feel that by coming forward and going public, it just snuck you out.
That's what I was told, and George and everybody, said that. It's public. No one will touch you, and I fell for it. And I just
wish you did.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes when it's just overstressed and people can't run you on.
Yeah, but this is going to make things worse doing this.
No, this is going to make things better.
That's what I was trying to tell him.
How is this going to make things better?
Because you're getting a real chance to explain yourself in a way that's going to make people who not only work in the government, people that are police officers and firefighters and first responders and doctors and scientists. They're going to empathize and empathize with what it must be like to be a person like you in your 20s who gets thrust into this world unknown and confronted with one of the most, if not the most, important discovery in the history of human beings. The big question, are we alone? It's the number one question. The rest two questions, right? What happens when we die, and are we alone? Those are the two big questions, right? And if we're not alone, and someone knows we're not alone, and these some people who know we're not alone are these bungling sort of...
Even if they weren't, it's a crime.
Yes.
They're not telling the rest of us.
I mean, I don't mean bungling in terms of incompetent. I mean, they can't be competent. It seems to me, the way you're describing it, no one can be competent in this technology. Like the Victorian era scholars analyzing some sort of a nuclear reactor. There's no way. Why do you think they are?
Why do you think they're not telling us? Let's just make an assumption that this is true right now. Why do you think they're not telling us? Our government doesn't tell us what's your best.
Well, let me put it in. What do you do? If I'm the president, okay, and I get this information, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? There's something we don't know. Something we don't understand. There's something that came from another world. We got it tucked away in the mountains. And I just want you guys to know about it. Hey, sleep tight. Hey, American Idol's on tonight. Who do you think's going to win?
Yeah.
Who's going to win American Idol?
One is uncertainty, the other one is about a lie. Absolutely not knowing what to tell people because you don't really understand it yourself.
Right. What do you say? You want to run a government? You want to get people to pay their taxes?
But there's something else.
Yeah. What do you say?
So you have these objects flying with impunity, right? But you have something else.
Well, not only that, what can you say? Like, how much do you really know?
I think it's mainly the technology. They
That's-
just want to keep the technology secret because if
Military.
there's
Whoever
yeah.
gets this
There's
wins, dude.
Yeah,
They win.
you
Right.
control where you literally become invincible once you master the technology. You cannot penetrate a field like that. So imagine I know it's all science fiction, but science fiction turns into science fact. If you have real force fields around aircraft and battleships, you win. You win. You can force your will upon anybody. And like I said, there's so much more to the story. When I was first there were Russian scientists at this point. This was early on in the project.
Because this was before Operation Paperclip as well, right?
I would imagine there was, I don't know the date. When was that?
When did the 98? I don't know. So it's maybe roughly 10 years later, Operation Paperclip becomes Freedom of Information Act.
We're talking about Russia, not Germany. We're talking about Russian scientists.
Yeah, but I mean, Russian scientists, a lot of them came from Germany. A lot of those rocket scientists that work with NASA, they all came from the Nazi scientists.
Got it.
So some Russians got some of them.
I
we
just
got
know
some
it.
of them.
At some point, there was intense
collaboration
cooperation.
with
I mean,
Russia.
even exchanging some ideas on nuclear weapons and EMP tests and stuff like things we would never have discussed with them. But at the same time, it was in the late '80s. They were involved and actually in the area at S4 with us.
And you got to communicate with these guys, or you saw them?
No, I knew they were there. Barry would talk about the commies. Yeah, the commies. And
that was back when you were the commies.
yeah, they were real commies. At some point, it wasn't our group, but at some point, there was a big discovery made. And this did not happen when I was there. It happened in between my trips to there. And after that, apparently, they decided it was just too cool to share with anybody, and the Russians weren't ever allowed back on the base after that.
But you don't know what that discovery was.
No, like I said, it wasn't my group. So one of the other groups really found out something. But it just told American feds, all right, this is ours, you guys can handle that.
Was there any inkling that any other government had something to say?
No, nothing that I had heard.
See, that was the thing that always freaked me out, was why, if something was so superior to human beings, it's almost like visiting an ant colony. Like, why would you go to the queen? I don't give a fuck who the queen is. I'm a human. I'm so superior to you ants. I don't care who you have running your hive. I'm just going to study it.
I think it's who got it.
Who got it?
Look at the, rocket technology in Germany.
But they got 9 of them?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me either. So they were either in the same area, or one had clues to where others were. I mean, I don't know. You have to fill that in there, but you're right. I mean, 9 of them. That's a big dig if it was archaeological.
Well, one of the more recent sightings and these discussions that have been coming out recently from Air Force pilots and Navy pilots, they've been talking about things happening in the ocean, and that something literally goes into the water or something below the surface of the water.
2004 Tic Tac Nimitz case. So that's when George Knapp and I broke on the radio twice before the New York Times, so I know this one really well. Commander Fravor and those pilots. There was a disturbance on the surface of the water. Commander Fravor visually saw what looked like similar to a cross, some object. So it's like as if you have some coral under the water, it's breaking over.
Right.
The Tic Tac is doing this crazy maneuver that defies. It's a gravity-propelled system.
They saw it in the sky before they saw it in the water, right?
Yeah, so there were radar that was picking these things coming down from 80,000 feet, dropping to 50 feet in less than a second.
This is it, Jamie? What is it?
This is actually on the news today. There was a briefing.
So a lot of people get this confused.
Not this one then either?
No, so that is called the gimbal. So there's 3 videos released by the Pentagon that are all actually. I would really just pay attention to the source videos. So you've got the Tic Tac, which is this object that Commander Fravor saw. Another pilot filmed it with a FLIR pod, and it goes. But this one you see is really important to Bob's story. The gimbal craft has been recently analyzed. It's FLIR. Not only does it's definitive that it's not conventional anything by the right's movements, but there's a possible error around a propulsion source. So this object, by the way, sat stationary for days, if not weeks. It sat stationary.
They found it 11 hours later. They were saying there's no way this thing using that kind of energy to go that fast could just hover
The
for
amount of
11
time.
hours.
And by the way, you're seeing a very small part of what happened that day. This object was not alone. And so hopefully that information comes out and we can, I wish we had video of it. I'm sure we all want to see it. But that's called the gimbal. That was East Coast, right? 2015. West Coast 2004 was the Tic Tac. The disturbance on the water, Commander Fravor believes there was something under that water that was causing that disturbance when the Tic Tac was coming around and doing it. Inside the people that are studying this, they're thinking maybe the Tic Tac system was causing disturbance, but the USO, identified submerged object that he visually saw. The whole interesting thing about that is, I would love Bob to describe it, why it doesn't matter if these craft are in space, air, or water. Why doesn't it matter? I love when he talks about this shit.
Well, first of all, Commander Fravor was the F-18 pilot off the Nimitz that was sent out to find out what this stuff is. But and it wasn't just, I got a chance to talk to him recently, and it wasn't just a radar image. I mean, Commander Fravor had eyes on it for over 5 minutes watching this thing, as 4 other pilots did. So this wasn't a radar blip or anything. I mean, these guys were watching this thing. But, one of the things, I think in the gimbal video, the way the craft that we worked on flies is it doesn't fly like a conventional aircraft does, and it doesn't fly like a flying saucer would in a 1950s movie. It flies belly first. I mean, it may set down conventionally, but it always rotates. It does a roll maneuver, puts its belly towards the target, and then moves away.
So it's like a car flying with the wheels forward.
Right. I mean, it may lift and land on the wheels, but at some point when it wants to leave, flips up, points the wheel where it wants to go, and it takes off. And the gimbal video, you can see the craft do the roll maneuver, and it's really interesting. It's exactly like the craft's going to work.
So much like we have different shaped aircrafts and fighter jets and cars, they probably have different shapes of these objects that operate under similar principles.
Right,
Perhaps.
but they all have the same power source.
They all have the same power source. And we're also dealing with, if you think about the laws of technological progression, you think of Moore's Law, and you think of how things accelerate, you've got to think that if this civilization is who knows how many years more advanced than we are. If not even years. I mean, we're thinking about it in terms of conventional terms, right? The way we look at the world. I mean, they might be just superior in terms of their intellect. They've got to be. Maybe. We don't know, right?
Well, the only reason I say that is because, look, everyone doesn't necessarily start at a steam engine,
Right.
go to an internal combustion engine, and then, electric power, nuclear power, and go up the ladder that we
Right.
The binary, if the stuff is true about the origin and the binary star system, and they have heavier elements that we don't have, and this stable element 115 is a naturally occurring material, maybe that's the first thing they started experimenting with. And the version of their steam engine, their first product, was something that operated like this. And actually, when they came to Earth to look around, or whatever, they were amazed at the stuff we were doing. These guys burned stuff and squirted out the back to go forward. So,
Right.
who says they follow any kind of normal progression like that?
My thought was, if you went back to the 1400s and then you went from 1400 to 1500, you're not going to see that much of a difference technologically, right? If you go from 2000 to 3000, I assume there's going to be a radical change.
Right. Well, the delta, the rate of change
Yeah.
is magnificently higher than it used to be.
Right. So if you think about what they had in 1988 and you think about what they probably have in 2019, just logically, it seems like they would advance.
I would think so.
The only question is, like, are they living? Is that a living thing in terms of like a biological thing? Or are they some sort of an artificially created creation like we are working on right now? We're in the middle of working on artificial reality, artificial beings, sentient beings, artificial intelligence. There's silicon-based life forms that they're essentially trying to create. Boston Dynamics that the company
You
that's
can
making
make
robots?
robots,
Yeah.
You can make machines out of flesh,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
a cyborg or a cybernetic organism is just that, that's what a lot of people think those like gray things are, that people call the grays.
Yeah.
It's like they're machines printed from flesh. So what you're saying is like not
Well, it could just be
No.
synthetic life.
Synthetic
They don't
life,
even need
yeah.
to be,
right.
machines.
Well, they seem to have no sex organs, the way they describe it. People that have had interactions with them assume these people are liars
Right.
or crazy or whatever.
Right.
That they have no sex organs and that they don't seem to have any muscle that is almost like a frame, and they have enormous heads. I mean, if you look at Australopithecus or depictions of ancient hominids, and then you go to human beings, one of the things you see is bigger heads, weaker bodies.
Well, you see a clear progression of evolution,
Yes.
too, where something like that, I would lean towards a synthetic organism because
Yes.
it looks like it was made for a specific task. There's
Right.
no reproductive organs, so, that almost kind of leaves out any kind of, physical evolution.
Right. Well, that's also our bottleneck, right? Our bottleneck is our biological imperative. The need to breed, emotions, fear, anxiety, all these different things that exist in order to force us into making sure we reproduce. I mean, that's essentially what it is. They're human reward systems that aren't necessary once they can figure out a way to make some sort of sentient artificial life. Some sort of thing that doesn't have these biological limitations that we have.
By the way, these craft, all these different kinds of reported, because it was confusing. I always thought of flying saucers when I heard Bob Lazar talk about flying saucer, right? But if you look back in history, people have always reported the weirdest shapes. Like, none of them are alike. There are saucers, but you got cigar shape, you got, the top hat shape, you get orbs. Why? Maybe they're certain shapes. They're things like maybe different tools. And I want to be clear, the reason I know that memo is realism. I spent a lot of time with Dr. Mitchell, 6 Men Walking. Last guy to film him before he died, right? That's how I know. I don't want any journalists thinking I got it from anywhere else. I know because of Dr. Mitchell. And he said the same thing. Maybe these things are performing different tasks, and that's
Well,
why.
they seem, if you think about what an alien is in terms of our the sort of iconic image of an alien, like the Steven Spielberg Close Encounters of the third kind of alien, they seem like what we'd assume a human being would eventually become. And these things are tiny. Human beings are smaller than or weaker than. Seems to be trending in that direction. This trend seems to be amplified progression, our lack of muscle strength, and how that means moving in society to try to get away from all the things that we think are abhorrent about human beings and the terrible behaviors that we have. If we one day do give birth to some sort of an artificial being, like Marshall McLuhan's quote, "We are the sex organs of the machine world." You know, that one day we...
Okay, I'll buy this.
Yeah, McLuhan was brilliant. And that quote has always been one of my favorites. Because, okay, what are we doing when we're constantly technologically innovating? We're constantly looking for faster cars, better computers, bigger screens, faster, more resolution, more pixels, more this, more that, higher bandwidth, 5G, 10G.
Right.
What are we doing? We're moving into this, if you just follow it, objectively stand back, don't attach yourself or your civilization or culture to it, and look at what it has been. We're moving 100% towards technological innovation. If you looked at this species from afar, and if you weren't a part of it, what does the species do? Beehive's the same fucking thing that you see 10 years ago. You go by, see a beehive, it's amazing, it's cool, but they're the same fucking thing. They figured out how to do it, they make a beehive. We don't. We make better things.
What would you
constant?
And at some point, I think that technology is going to fuse with us.
Yes.
And we're going to become...
It's already happening.
Yeah.
Elon Musk talked about it on my podcast, that we are cyborgs. You just carry it in your pocket. It's a phone. It answers any question you want. You can talk to it. It'll give you the answers instantaneously. It navigates you. It has all your phone numbers. It has all your contacts. You get a whole group of people listening to you through it. It's connecting us in ways even involuntarily.
haptics, that kind of thing?
It's also getting on your wrist. How many people have iWatches and Apple Watches?
Well, right, and that's only because we can't integrate them yet. But if you know that point is coming.
100%. Yeah, I didn't joke about it last night, but I have a bit about it. But I do about the integration between humans and technology.
What would you do if you were a hyper intelligence, right? Would you do the work yourself, or would you create some cool things called like humans to do it for you? Would you create things that are cybernetic organisms to come in with machines and do it for you? If you were a hyper intelligence that has kind of changed like you described, you'd probably create workers, right?
Well, that's a vast conspiracy.
I'm not talking about conspiracy.
But it is a kind of conspiracy.
I'm asking.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily that. I mean, you can look at that. That is the way conspiracy theories look at it. The way I would look at it is that there's obviously a progression going on, a biological progression. There's some sort of integration with technology. There's some sort of imperative, this need for technological innovation. It's inescapable. Everyone has it. And I think it's attached to materialism in some sort of strange way. Because so many people work so hard to get big things. And like, God, that seems so illogical and preposterous, and it makes people unhappy and depressed and accountability seems to stop it. Why is that? Maybe it's because we are the electron caterpillar birthed butterfly. Maybe that's what we're doing. Our job is to make some sort of... We don't even know what we're doing. Say a caterpillar is, hey caterpillar, what are you doing? Man, just doing my thing. It's my job. I have to be good.
This could be a natural part of evolution.
It could be.
That we're just supposed to do this
Exactly.
and make the jump to some sort of mechanized,
Right.
yeah, non-biological.
An orangutan that is fishing with a spear. No. They figured out how to fish with spear. There's primatologists.
Wait, without somebody showing them how to fish?
No, they've imitated human beings doing it. And now they do it, but they do it independently. They're not trained orangutans. They're wild orangutan. Look at that. This wild orangutan.
Okay, that's impressive. Very impressive.
Well, there's primatologists. What's it called? Biologists that monkeys and chimps and some of the great apes are moving into the Stone Age. They're currently entering the Stone Age. Like, they're not staying what.
Lose my through, argue about overspending, embark on endless DIY projects, clean up all cobwebs, rewire sockets, check for ghosts, fix pipes, or just move in. Start fresh with Carla Holmes.
What they were 100,000 years ago or 500,000 years ago, but they're actively using tools and they're experimenting with different ways to use those tools, and then they're making tools out of stone. They're making tools out of sticks. And they're using them. Well, this might just be what happens. This might just be what happens. I mean, why else? Why the fuck would we work so hard? I mean, I was driving to LA this morning. I had a doctor's appointment, so I was on the 405 at 8 in the morning. Jesus Christ, like, this is so crazy. When you're on the 405 in LA at 8 o'clock in the morning, you see literally a million cars. And it's just everywhere you go, there's people. And also, I'm in a Tesla, so I'm on autopilot. So I'm there sitting, listening to a podcast. I barely have my hand on the wheel. I'm not touching shit. This car's driving me along. I'm not even doing anything. I'm just hanging out. It's so much less stress, by the way, to do it that way.
Right.
So it encourages you to innovate. It encourages you to embrace this new technology. I got this giant screen showing the navigation in front of me. Oh, I'll be there 5 minutes early. Excellent. And I'm listening to a podcast wirelessly. It's Bluetooth streaming from my phone. And I pulled that podcast, which came out today, out of the fucking sky. And I'm listening to it, and I'm all comfortable. My nice little car, just driving on the way to the doctor's office.
This is Arizona. It is different than your Walkman. It's frightening.
I like just swinging around in trees. I like running from jaguars. This is life. Guys, life is running from crocodiles. It's not living in a fucking suburban.
No, there's probably some that are like that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think when it comes, we're going to embrace it. We're going to embrace it the same way you embrace cell phones, the same way you embrace television. There's going to be a few holdouts. I don't even know what you know, man. Those there's few and far between. Good luck with that on Facebook.
Yeah, I was just going to throw Ted Kaczynski.
Oh, man. Ted Kaczynski was right. This is something that I think about sometimes when you die. That Ted Kaczynski was a part of the Harvard LSD study. This has been proven. Ted Kaczynski, they cooked his fucking brain when he was at Harvard. And then when he went over to Berkeley and became a professor, his goal was to make enough money so that he could implement this program and live in the woods and then write his manifesto and start killing people that were involved in propagating technology.
He was expunged from the Harvard logs, by the way. This is something my friend just called me about. So there's like this private library, and they used to print people's names whenever they were part of the university. He was one of the handful of people that were expunged from it. I want to jump back to the one that Joe. I want to be very careful with that word conspiracy theory. What I was saying to you was, we terraform our Earth, right? We change the environment. We do all this innovation. What is stopping us from thinking that that's not being done? I'm not saying it's okay. What's stopping us from thinking that that's being done on a much bigger level, on a cosmic level?
I mean, like aliens coming down doing it to humans.
Well, I'm telling you that there is something here. There's a fact. There's something. There are craft. They're here. They're not ours. They're here. So the question is, what is that about? And I'm just looking at what we do with what you're describing with technology.
Well,
and
I think it's much more likely that the same way we observe chimps and we observe that they are now in the Stone Age, that they're observing us, and that they're recognizing that there is a pattern, that there's steps that happen. I mean, Carl Sagan talked about the different levels of civilization. That we don't get.
Man like Carl Sagan,
we're
yeah.
never going to reach
Come on now.
this.
right,
I mean,
we're type 1 civilization. We're going to stay type 0.
Well,
yeah.
we're in this warring, polluting, pillaging,
We're awesome.
civilization. It's we're awesome.
But in that way, we're not.
Yeah, we're children that have immense power that we didn't really. The other thing is you're using the immense power that other people have created, right? I mean, even when you're driving a car, you stomp on the gas like, whoa! You didn't invent the fucking engine. You didn't invent tires. There's all these things that were involved in the creation of this thing that is really outside of your grasp of understanding. But yet you have the ability to use it, like a person with a gun. I'm just gonna bang people. You don't invent a gun. So you without the intellect to craft and engineer and manifest these creations, you just have access to paper, Bitcoin, whatever the fuck you're using, a credit card. Now you have almost no responsibility. You can just flippantly use these things, which is why we were very childlike in our actions. We haven't had to earn the responsibility. We haven't had to earn these things that we've been able to have, and we've only been able to have them because other people have innovated and spent ungodly amounts of time, effort, and focus in the lab to create these things. And then they've all put them together, and then what's the reason for profit? Well, what's the reason for profit? Well, why are you doing this? So you buy more things. What are you doing? What better things. That's what we do. That's all we
That's
do.
all we do is make better.
Why the fuck do people stay home? Why can't we grow chickens and food in the backyard? Why can't we do what we fucking can? We certainly can. People do it. We decide to make that almost impossible. Our preferred way of living is to stuff everyone into a very small area where no one grows anything other than wheat. This is what LA is. LA is 20 million people with hard surfaces, as many hard surfaces as you can. Boy, if you got an acre backyard in LA, holy shit, look at all that green. This is amazing. Well, no, that's the fucking earth coming through this weird sort of creation that we put on top of the earth. But the goal is that, like New York City, there's none of it, right? You've got Central Park and they just got human shit. You stacked up, no one's growing anything. And then constant work, everyone's up early, go, go, go. Innovate, progress, make that progress, find more things. And every year, hey Apple, where's this fucking new phone? As if your phone isn't good enough. Taking pictures and videos and calling you when you got applications to tell you what it's not gonna do a blink of an eye, it's all gone, none of that. 10,000 years, or damn goes or whatever. It'll disintegrate. So it's amazing because we have created that and everything's trying to spring through that. We keep it maintenance down, but we're a blink, man. Something hits. But we don't think that way. Well, you think in terms of your own life, right? You think in terms of what you want, what you need right now. We are in many ways this combination, this weird, primitive, ape-like thing with the ability to calculate and manipulate our world and our environment that makes us wholly unique. On top of that, with existential angst and fear, what kind of questions? These fucking people some shit. You're not worried about the future. You're trying to figure out what reality is. You're on a goddamn purple spaceship at 10,000 miles an hour, hurling through infinity. There's no meaning to this thing. Just keep making shit. Keep making stuff. And then one day, that switch in this life will be born out of information. Progress, technology, life, what you see, that these things are observing. I'm not observing it, but yeah.
Are you implying that they're us?
I don't think they are us, but I think they are what happens when things keep going. And it's not us, just like we're not monkeys, right? I'm not a chimp.
Oh, that'd be cool. They're from here. Your idea?
No. That this is what happens all over the universe, right?
Yeah.
This is what happened. Here's the thing. I went to see Brian Cox's. He does this amazing live show. Robert have these LED screens, these huge screens with high resolution pictures of the cosmos. And one of the most mind-blowing things was he has this large-scale image of the universe, and it shows all the individual galaxies of the universe, and it just keeps moving through all these galaxies in 3 dimensions. You're obviously looking at an incredibly small depiction of something that's immensely large, the galaxy of 100 billion stars. You see this dot, with this little dot that's flying through space, surrounded by other little darts with very similarly spaced distances. Like if we see uniformity that in terms of like the distance between galaxies, so many galaxies, it's so similar. It might vary slightly, and that slightly might be hundreds of millions of light years, right? But there's so much uniformity. Why would we not assume that uniformity exists pretty much everywhere, and that all these things that you're seeing that are so similar, you do see binary star systems, you do see single star systems, but there's also some speculation that that our solar system was one time was a binary star system, right? I mean, that's one of the speculations about that object that they find outside the Kuiper Belt that they think is 10 times larger than Earth. They think it might have been at one point in time a star. But this uniformity that you see, why wouldn't we think that has the same implications biologically? That there's some sort of a biological uniformity, and that this happens given the right sets of circumstances.
Yeah,
You should tell them some of the stuff that you've read that you don't know is true. I mean, if the stuff is true about the propulsion stuff, I mean, anyway.
Well, what have you read? What
you saw, too.
What are you talking about? Spill the beans, Bob.
I gotta poke the bear here.
Get some more liquor in you.
Well, I mean, the only thing I could verify was what I had my hands on. There was talk of weapon systems. There were different projects. Project Galileo, Project Sidekick was supposed to be weapon applications of the craft. Project Looking Glass had to do with time and the effects of time in the craft. Now, I don't think we're not talking about making a time machine like in science fiction, but we're talking about small distortions, intentional distortions of time, and how that can be used, as a not as a well, it was part of a weapon program.
How are you informed of this?
These again were just the small briefings that I read, but again, I don't really like to talk about those because I don't have any information on them, and it was just small briefings.
But he told Commander Fravor that what he saw might have been a time dilation and not
it could be because gravity affects time. Space-time. I'm sure you've heard of that. And what Commander Fravor saw as he was in the F-18 approaching it, he described it as a ping-pong ball in a cup, shaking it back and forth. It was moving that fast. Obviously, if there's anything inside there, it's going to be battered to hell. But my point was that one of two things: either there's a gravitational envelope in there which negates any inertia effects, or you are seeing through a gravity distortion field. So, just like you're looking at a highway and you see, an optical distortion going through there. Well, the same thing happens in gravity. And the gravity may not actually be moving like that. It may just look like it. Because you only see it through the field. So, it may be making a much more gentle move. I'm not saying that's it, but it has to be one of the two.
When the thing shows up 60 miles away, they noticed it on radar 60 seconds after it left Commander Fravor. It was at his cap point, because the next point he was destined to go to 60 miles away. And in 60 seconds on radar, the same object ends up there. Oh, it's going. No, the radar just picked it up in 60 seconds.
Yeah, it could have been there instantly.
And we know that.
The cycles time.
Oh, so it cycles? What are cycles?
Yeah, it doesn't sweep, but I mean, it scans. It's a planar array, so it has scans. Right, the point is, though, that the craft moved to its next location before he knew where his next location would be. And that's well documented. So that's a pretty shocking piece of information.
What's fascinating to me, too, is that you were discussing this, the way this react worked, and that these things were not really connected.
No, nothing is connected. There's no wiring at all.
That freaks me the fuck out.
Charge your iPhone,
Yeah.
well, wireless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a simple electromagnetic.
Tesla.
Yeah, I know again, but that's just simple electromagnetic induction.
Right, but I mean Tesla, the scientist, had this concept of
Right, that's what
what
I'm talking
I mean,
about.
for other
yeah.
people that don't know what we're saying, he wanted to send wireless electricity through the sky, and Westinghouse was like, "Get the fuck out of here with that!" Like when anybody could just pull electricity out of the sky.
Can't meter it.
Yeah, they couldn't. They couldn't.
We had
meter
this
it.
talk in the car right over and trying to chill him out. We're talking about Tesla and how he couldn't be metered and how it all went down. So it's funny you bring it up.
Yeah.
That who knows what would have happened in terms of innovation had he been allowed to go forward with that.
Well, we probably wouldn't have computers.
You think?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive. Well, I mean, forget about microelectronics. Well, this is dumping huge amounts of electromagnetic energy in the air, and yeah, we'd be able to wirelessly turn on our lights, but there'd be no radio communication. The interference would be something that would be overwhelming. It would induce electric currents in anything with a small wire on it. So integrated circuits, transistors disintegrated before they were tested for operation. So it would destroy
fucked us up.
Yeah, it would have stopped us dead. We have,
it'd be great. You could turn lighters on and heaters from all over the place with no wires, but it would stop modern electronics.
And if we became dependent on it, it would almost be like our dependence on fossil fuels. Although it's destructive, it's very difficult for us to develop a network.
It would have changed the course of how we developed, which is so interesting when you talk about it. The civilization of the star system didn't even start with fossil fuels. They had one naturally on their planet, and they're like, cool, anti-gravity's pretty awesome.
Well, the fact
I think it's important that that actually happened. Yeah. It might have been stopped in its tracks for a reason.
and it's just incredible technological progression under another timeline of what we experienced. Imagine what this alien race must have been like. And, God, just to be able to see something like, I mean, obviously we've seen it in different life. We see the life of certain beetles in comparison to the life of certain fish. Very, very different existence, very different life cycles. Yeah, octopus. I mean, we see all these different variables in terms of biological entities on Earth, but we don't see it in terms of technological innovation, as we're the only one that's intelligent that can innovate. We have intelligent creatures, but they're in the ocean. The only other thing that are like us are dolphins and orcas and whales, and they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment. And subsequently, because they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment, we put them in fish tanks. And we're like, get in the tank, do some tricks.
Right.
You know, the only thing he saw in the craft, if we were considering Bob's story, the only thing that he saw in the craft that he related to, it looked like a human could make, was this honeycomb hatch. And I always love that because you're like obsessed with this thing that you could recognize.
You know, I only focus on that because it was the one thing that I understood how it worked.
What was it?
And it was the access to the level below, and it was, well, you know, if you take, you have a 6-pack of beer, and you take out the cardboard divider, set it on the table, you can put a lot of pressure on the top. But if you push it from the sides, it collapses flat. So it was something like that in a honeycomb shape that was essentially some sort of sheet metal, and you could walk on that upper layer, but if you took the corner, stuck your finger in, and pushed, it collapsed and made an entryway. So I thought that was a really unique, I'd never seen that before. It was the only thing in the craft that made absolute sense to me. As that, we can make that, and all that is a hatch.
Was there any discussion about the material used in the craft?
I'm sure there was, but that was about Metallurgy Division. It had nothing to do with us.
So you never got
Not even the slightest briefing. I don't even know if it was metal or if it was ceramic. I think there's a fine line between the two.
Now, one of the things that's happened that has allowed people to there's obviously been some sort of an effort to erase your past. Yeah, some sort of an effort to erase your education history, employment history at Los Alamos. In fact, the only way your employment history was proven at Los Alamos is someone got a list, a directory of the employees from the past, and read into it, and you were on that list. So it proved that you worked there, even though people were trying to deny it. They were trying to use that as a way to discredit you. You never did work at Los Alamos. You weren't really a scientist. What was that like to experience? I mean, of course, we're talking about the 1980s, the 1990s, when you could get away with something like that.
Yeah, I found there are a lot less records on computers. At that time, it was still file cabinets and folders. But yeah, that was frightening. That was one of the first things I started. I think George Knapp was the first one that uncovered that. I mean, he saw my birth certificate disappear.
It disappeared.
Yeah,
there was no record of your being.
Yeah, there was no record of that. There was no record.
His mom tells me about that. Like, it was frightening for her. He's got a real family, you know. He's a real person. It was frightening for her.
But even the Los Alamos thing really surprised me, and that they were so adamant that no, this guy never worked here. Don't be ridiculous. And George went back and forth, you know, for
I got the letters on the wall. Yeah,
months. I mean, it was ridiculous. But fortunately, somebody came up with a 1982 phone book directory. I mean, and also, originally I told you, you know, when I worked there, I was on the front page of the paper, so they were still able to archive, you know, bring that back from the archive. And, you know, Bob Lazar, a physicist working here at Los Alamos, so there was at least something there. But
somehow George came up with the phone directory.
And then Bob took George with cameras into Los Alamos.
Oh yeah. So we flew out there, and I said, "Look, come on in. I'll show you where I worked. We'll go in. We'll meet people." And George went with me, and filmed
You
in
had
some
to
of that.
navigate the place.
Oh yeah, and met people, and and
Well,
so
Los Alamos was also the place where they had the machine that was able to read the size of your digits.
no, that was also that was S4.
That was S4. And explain that.
So now this was back in the 80s.
And this is back in the 80s where when you discuss this, people are like, this doesn't even exist.
Yeah,
Okay. What was it?
it was a way